Welcome to H2K Infosys. H2K Infosys is a e-verify business based in Atlanta, Georgia, United States. We provide 100% job-oriented, instructor-led, face-to-face, true live online software training programs. It also includes access to cloud test lab with software tools. We provide live project for you to work on. We also provide assistance with mock interviews, resume preparation and review, and job placement assistance. H2K Infosys is trusted by so many students across the world. H2K Infosys provides world-class services in IT training with real-time project work for corporates and individuals, special IT training for MS students in the United States, software design, development, QA manual and automation, performance testing and maintenance, IT staff augmentation, job placement assistance, and tech support.
So a structured query language, SQL, is basically to read data from database. Like why you have to read data from database? What is the need? What are the different scenarios you are going to test? What are different scenarios you are going to test? What's the need of reading database? Why you have to check the data on the database?
To view the data, to update the data, to test the backend testing.
Okay.
For example, it's a bank domain, so it should return only the customers, their name and the account number.
So basically, like you need to really understand when it comes to this database testing, right? Obviously, the tester is going to do the database testing. You need to really understand what is that application architecture. So we discussed the application architecture, right? Any applications, they follow this client-server architecture. What is that client-server architecture? Two-tier architecture. What it contains basically? So that client-server architecture, guys, always remember. Okay. So we talked about the client-server architecture also in the last class. I remember you know that picture, but nobody. So when it comes to this client-server architecture, you always have to have this picture in your mind, because they simply ask this question in the interviews. What is client-server architecture? Any applications, they simply follow this architecture, right? What is the architecture, by the way? The design, right? Who do this architecture in the project? Right, the system architects, right? Usually the senior most developers in the companies, they will act as like these system architects, right? They are going to do this part. Architect is nothing but the design, like your when it comes to your home design, like architect is going to come up with first the design, right? The appearance, the stuff. Similarly here in the software projects also, like we have to have this kind of architect in place. So what he's going to come up is, hey, this is how actually this application is supposed to work. and he's going to say there are different clients. You have a number of clients. So what they do, they're going to talk to the server. And then the server internally is going to have the database, right? So how this communication happens? So this is nothing but your GUI part or the client, graphical user interface, in other words called the front end or the client. If it is a standalone application or a web-based application, you have always the client, right? What is the difference between a standalone and web-based applications? What is a standalone application? Can you give me an example? What is a standalone application? Desktop application. In other words, they are called standalone desktop or Windows applications.
The application which doesn't need a server or a database in the backend is known as standalone.
That is not true actually. Like even the standalone applications use the database. But only thing is standalone or desktop applications, why they called standalone or the desktop applications is they are specific to your system. For example, Microsoft
no server
Office,
requirement.
Right? Microsoft Office. It's a standalone desktop application, right? Once that particular application is installed on your system, that is specific to your system, you can use it. Nobody else can use it. It is a standalone. Okay? Yeah, it doesn't require anything else. Like everything gets on your system. Everything is related to that application. Everything gets installed on your system. Okay, no dependency. Forget about operating systems. Okay, those are the platforms. Operating systems are the platforms that on top of that you can install any applications. Okay, it's basically a platform. Okay, when it comes to the web applications, what is web application?
There is always a server to contact.
Yes, so basically those are also called standalone or desktop applications, like web applications or browser-based applications, right? Because you are going to use those applications on any of the browsers, right? Web or browser-based applications. So you have different browsers like your Internet Explorer, Firefox, or Chrome, right? So you are going to use any of these browsers to work with web applications. For example, come on, why are you thinking so much? Gmail.com, Google.com, Yahoo.com, bankofamerica.com, ATD.com, BCBS.com, oh my gosh. Right? Not only commercial, anything web-based, internet-based is a web application, right? It's a commercial or educational or something, charity, anything is a web-based application, right? So, yeah, H2K Infosys. Okay, H2KInfosys.com. Okay. So, whether it's a web or standard applications, you have this kind of architecture, right? Say, for example, we are talking about, what do you think? This is a desktop or a web application? Are you sure? Where you see the browser? Okay, so this is a desktop application, right? Because it's a standalone or desktop application. Because here we are not using any browsers to open this application. It opens on its own, right? That's also remember, standalone application opens on its own. If you open Microsoft Word, you are not opening in any browser, right? It opens on its own. So this is nothing but your client. Similarly, your gmail.com is nothing but your client, the front end, right? Clear on that? Client, desktop, web applications. Because you are going to say in the interviews, I work on this application. Then the interviewer is going to ask, is it a standalone application or a web application? Then you say, okay, no, I don't know. Okay, then we are done. Right? So you have to be very clear on that. What application is a desktop or standalone application? Most of the applications nowadays are web-based. Okay? Because the web applications you can share, right? They are shareable. That is the advantage. That's why most of the applications nowadays are web-based applications. Okay? Good. So whether it's your gmail.com or it is something like this kind of applications, you are going to interact with the client, right? As a user, you do different things. So what are the things that you're going to do? Say, for example, you look at gmail.com or your yahoo.com. So you're going to create accounts, right? There are different people. They're going to interact, and then they're going to say, hey, I want to create my account. They are the clients, which is nothing but your browser, okay? Client is nothing but your browser. Remember that. Then this client is going to talk to the servers. This is how the interaction goes. The clients are many. The server is one, right? So how this communication happens? How this communication happens from the client to the server? What is that communication? How your information will transfer via internet? So I think Bharti mentioned here something about HTTP, right? That is how. What is HTTP? Hypertext Transfer Protocol, right? So whenever just you open your browser, go to gmail.com, and then you're going to create our account, right? So you enter username, password, and blah, 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 and then click on create account button. That information will go via HTTP protocol. This is called HTTP request. Your request will go via internet and then go and touch this server. And also you get HTTP response. This is basically called HTTP request and response. And this portion is called the server, right? What is server role here? What server is going to do? Yes. So basically it has to process the client request. This is the server role, right? It has to process the client request and then what? And sends response to client. That is the server role. It has to process the client request, whatever the request that is coming, because you are asking, hey, I want to create an account. That information will send via internet through HTTP, that is Hypertext Transfer Protocol, and then it sends to the server. The server is going to process your request now. Okay, please wait. I am processing. That's what you get a message, right? Processing. So the client is processing your request, and then while it is processing request, then what happens? This is called the database. So that information gets stored into the database. The server is going to store that information into the database. Store data into database. So the the server is going to talk to the database. Okay, then I stored all the database, and then it sends saying that okay, everything is fine, and then it sends that back to the server, and the server is going to send back the response to the client saying that that's where you see the message, oh, okay, your account is created successfully, right? That's how the communication happens between the client and server. This is called two-tier architecture. Client-server architecture. All right? Always remember this part. So now, the question is like what you are going to do in this client-server architecture, right? That is where actually the database testing. Why we have to do this database testing here? Basically, you are creating an account from the front end, right? You have to check how the data is stored into this database. So you are going to connect to the database and read data from the database, how it is stored, right? This is basically the client versus the database testing. Something like here, you have this login window, right? So here, this is a front end. So the user, as a tester like you are doing, okay, you log in into this application. And then, so now we are going to do okay. So now I can create some reservations on this application, right? Because it's a flight reservation application. So you can select all this flight from city, flight to city. This is the date of the flight, and then this is the flight information. I think summer is coming. Everybody is trying to put the reservations. Okay. So now, so I'm going to create this part, right? So this is the customer name, and then I want to fly in the first class, and I need 5 tickets, right? So this is my business source and destination cities, and this is the date I want to fly, and then click on this insert order. This is what you are doing from the client, the GUI part, graphical user interface, right? After you insert order, then where this information gets stored? Into the database. So tomorrow just you change your mind, no, I don't want 5 tickets, I just need 3 tickets. Then what the people are going to do, whoever did this reservation, right? He has to open the existing order. So when he is trying to say open order, because what's order number 142, right? So now he can open the order saying that order number 142. Because the customer changed his mind and he needs just 3 tickets, just you have to update the order. So you are trying to open the existing order 142 and then click OK. And now we are going to put 3. When you do this process, all of a sudden, like you got an error message, couldn't find the order. Okay, just here when you are trying to open order, and then you input, okay, just trying to update the order. When you input here suddenly like 142, it says the order is not found. Then what do you think? What's wrong?
Invalid order number.
That means maybe the data is not correctly stored into the database, right? That's why it's saying, okay, the order is not found. Though you created order from here and then you stored database, but it's not stored properly. That's what you're going to really check. When you create an order, go and pull the data from the database and then see whether that particular order information is rightly stored into the database or not. Clear? So now you are going to open the database, right, as a tester. Now, okay, let's see why that particular order is saying why it's not found. Okay, now you go and open the database. Let me open the browser. Internet Explorer, Windows Explorer, and try to open the database. So here, I navigate to the database. And then, that is installed. That particular application database is at this location. Where is that? So this is the database. You're going to open and then see how this order information is stored. Because from the front end, that order number is 142 and he's the customer Sam9, right? So this is this application database. Okay, it's trying to open the database. Save open. And now what the database contains, the tables. And here you have a table like orders. So you are going to, because all this order information gets stored into this orders table, you are going to open this orders table and then you are going to look at, okay, how this information gets stored. So this is the 142 order number, right? So you are going to compare, okay, what's wrong with this? What is that customer name you gave, Sam9? And then what's the departure date on this date, right? And then what's the flight number? 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. How many tickets? 3. First class. This way you're going to check what's the information you provided from the client and then how that gets stored into the database. You're going to check. Probably like why it's saying the order is not found. Maybe this number gets stored under flight number column. That's also you're going to check whether this number gets stored correctly into the right column, into the right table or not, right? Maybe that number stored into this flight number column, it says here 142. That's why when you're trying to open order, then it says the order is not found, all right? So those are the things you have to really check. What are the fields and then how that gets stored, all right? So that way you're going to check the client versus the database. This is one need, like where the testers are going to do this database testing when you work on the applications. Okay? Clear? Any questions? That's fine. That's a very good question, right? Okay, here the classroom, the question is, okay, this particular database is very small, right? All I have is 142 records, right? 142 rows. Okay, I can open the database and I can see it. Okay, this is how the story, right? But if you look at the Bank of America, how many records you will get? Millions of records, right? Out of this, okay, what is that particular customer transaction? Because customer is saying something like, okay, transaction is not successful. You have to really look at the database, right? That's where you are going to write SQL queries. That's a good question. I'm about to tell that, but you asked in between. So that's where, because this particular thing is very small database, you can directly open it and then see what's happening, right? But whereas in the real-time projects, it's not just 140 or 150 records. 150. If you look at the database, it has millions of rows, millions of records. So you cannot simply open the database and go through the millions, right? You see like, okay, where is this particular customer? Then if you want to do that way, maybe just you will find it in a week's time, right? Just go through row by row, go through all these millions of records, and then you will find the solution after a week. So that is where you are going to write SQL query. Then it's going to give you your answer in maybe less than a minute. Okay? Yes. Okay, so here you are going to write a query. Okay, tell me what is the order number for this customer. That's how you are going to write the query. Tell me the order number for this customer. Then it's going to run this query against the database and it's going to tell, okay, 142 is the order number. Right? So those are the things you're going to write SQL queries. That's what actually why you are going to learn SQL. Okay. Okay. Now let's go with this. That is a scenario where you're going to test database testing, right?
So Sam, where do we run these queries?
Pardon?
Where do we run these queries?
I'm sorry, can you come back?
Where do we run these queries?
Hello? 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 Oh, where do we run these queries? Basically, you are going to run these queries using the tools. Like you are going to use different tools like Toad. Toad is a tool. Okay. These are the tools that this is a very popular tool to run SQL queries. Anyway, so we are going to learn this tool, how to write SQL queries and then how to run. Okay. If you feel like, okay, something is not good in the database, right, that's where you are going to check whether the data is correctly stored into the database or not. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so now the test scenarios is like we looked at the client versus the database, right? Okay, so the client versus the database, that is one thing, like how we are going to test this database. And the other scenario is, this is also like where most of these database testers are required, right? So, data migration projects. So, what's this data migration? Yes. Correct. So data migration is nothing but changing companies. It's not really changing companies, it's something merging, right? If two companies are merging, or one company took over the other company, one company bought over the other company, whatever the scenario, right? Say, for example, nowadays, like if you see one bank on one state, then maybe after 1 month, like if you see that bank is not, the name is changed, right? That's why, like I used to see like on my state Flagstar, and then last month I saw it's a Flagstar, but this month when I look at it, then it says PNC. Oh my gosh, what happened to Flagstar? So that's actually the things are changing, right? Always these big companies will do this. Small companies, they're trying to bring back everything. So that is the other scenario where the database testers are really required. Two banks are merging. So Wells Fargo took over Webservices, or PNC took over Flagstar. Then what happens? Ultimately, they have to bring all the customer information into one database, right? So that is the other scenario. Say, for example, the Flagstar Bank. So they are going to do it, say, here we are talking about the database, right? So this particular database might be anything like Oracle or SQL Server or DB2 or any. So Flagstar is using, say, Oracle. Then PNC Bank is using SQL Server database for their application. Then one fine day, Flagstar decided, PNC Bank decided, okay, we are going to take over the Flagstar Bank. Then the Oracle, they are using Oracle database, and all that customer information they stored into this Oracle database, right? And they have this 30,000 customers here with Flagstar. Then PNC is also having some 40,000 customers. Obviously, because they want to bring all these 30,000 customer information into PNC database, right? Into this Bigdata Bank database. So that data migration is going to happen by the database administrators. Anyway, they are going to migrate all the data. Database administrators, those people will do that. We need not worry about those things, how the data will be moved. But our job is, once the data is moved, we have to test it, whether it is moved correctly or not. So that is the other scenario, that is the other testing scenario where you do the database testing. Okay? So here you are going to do different kinds of validations. So what kind of validation you do to make sure that data is moved? What is the preliminary check? Total number of customers, right? So once the data is moved, then you're going to check. Now the PNC database should say 70,000 customers.
So many of our students have given testimonials on how our training programs are. You will find them on kudzu.com and on our website H2KInfosys.com. On our website H2KInfosys.com, you will also find more detailed information on who we are, the courses that we offer, what each course covers. Also, if you're interested in a demo program, please register on our homepage on the left-hand side. Just give us more information about yourself and we will send you a link for a demo class. The demo class is absolutely free. Experience our commitment by just attending an orientation workshop at no cost. Our team of faculty and advisors are here to guide you with the right information. If you still have more questions, please feel free to call us. Call us at 770-777-1269. This is a United States number. If you're calling from the UK, call us at 020-337-17615. You can also email us at training@h2kinfosys.com or h2kinfosys@gmail.com. Thank you for watching our videos. We wish you a great career in information technology.